Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Bernt-Santy. And with me today, I've got Kisa Marx. Hi, Kisa.
Hello.
And Krystina Tapia. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So this is part 3 in the early childhood matriarchy series that we're trying this year. And I hope this is just going to be every May we do 4 episodes with a bunch of kick-ass women to talk about kick-ass women who have
That'll be
impacted
dope.
our work. As grateful as I am for the old white guys that we have in all our textbooks, I think there's so much more to the discussion than just those 5. And we throw in Montessori for good measure. But we don't
Right.
it's not expansive enough
Mhm.
for me, and it's not I love the personal stories that are coming out about connections. So anyway, that's what we're gonna do. I didn't, I guess, ask before we started recording who wanted to go first. So Kisa, will you go first?
I will. I will. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
So, should we just jump into it?
Yeah, yeah. Who are you here to
All
talk about?
right. I am here to talk about bell hooks.
Mhm.
And should I lead with the quote or just jump into the story?
I
I'll
think
do it whatever
whichever
way.
you want to do, but I want to say I sort of had gotten to a point where I assumed everybody who knew who Bell Hooks was, but I was in I'm on this
Cool.
hiring committee at work, and we were
Hmm.
in, so there's 4 or 5 of us on the committee interviewing a candidate, and she referred to Bell Hooks, and I was the only one in the room who knew who Bell Hooks was of the committee. So you might have to do a little deep dive.
So I will feel really comfortable with that because I was going to begin my story by saying I did not know who Bell Hooks was until she died.
Oh,
And my news feed was like filled with all of this impactful stuff that Bell Hooks had done and how it had changed people's lives and philosophies. And I was just like, why isn't her name capitalized? Like I was so
yeah,
confused.
yeah. You're spelling
And
it
then I started
wrong.
looking.
Yeah.
So I started looking and I'm like, oh, I do know who this person is. I just didn't realize Bell Hooks was this person, this
Uh,
influential person. And but then what happened was I was introduced to Goldie Muhammad. And then that everything that I was writing, she was saying in a published book. So then everything started going off, and I started thinking about theorists and theories and what they're saying and why they're saying it and who they're excluding. And I started looking for theorists that I related to. And I went back to bell hooks. And that's when I found out that Goldie Muhammad was probably impacted by bell hooks.
mm,
And so that
yeah.
leads me to having her as the person I want to feature.
Yeah.
So, should we jump into
Yeah,
her
jump
quote?
right in.
All right, mine is to educate as a practice of freedom is to teach in a way anyone can learn. So, and she is just so influential in my work because I speak about liberation. I speak about, I have like a liberated framework, and that is care, access, equity, and joy. And these
Hmm.
are all the things that she speaks about. And even though I didn't even know she was speaking about it, she says everything that was written on my heart, she had already published decades and decades before I knew she was there. So yes, everything she
Yeah.
does is influential to my work.
Yeah. So will you talk, because first of all, I love following you on social media, so I want to make sure we plug
Mhm.
that here too. Play Lab Foundation, is that how they find you? Um,
Yep,
s-
that's it.
so I
Hmm.
also want to just ask you then to talk about what you mean when you talk about liberation in this context, and how it connects back to bell hooks. But in the real world, what does that
Sure.
mean for you?
In the real world, what liberation means is the freedom to be, that you don't have to ask permission to think freely, to move freely, to make your own choices, to stand up for yourself, to say whether you're hungry, cold, sleepy, not tired,
Mm,
whether you don't want to wear a coat. These are all aspects of freedom. And children don't get them by and large just because
right.
adults say call all the shots for children, but then if you it doubles down when you talk about children, the global majority. because not only is your freedom taken because you're a child, your freedom is taken as a means of safety, right? Your parents think if you don't follow all the rules, if you don't comply, if you don't keep your head down and your mouth shut, then you will be unsafe in the world. So our freedom is like muted from the time we're born. And then we enter systems that are white supremacists in by design. And so they're going to tell you what to do, when to do it, but they're also going to have this implicit bias that kind of casts you out. So I don't even know. We're nothing. We're squashed down to nothing. I think I heard a podcast by you when they were talking about stamping the hammers, stamping it out. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
And that's what I thought about, is how you just come in and it's like smashed down to nothing. Yeah. And so when I think about liberation, something as simple as having voice and choice is freedom. It's resistance. It's somebody saying you have the right to exist and to exist loudly.
Yeah.
So that's liberation for me.
Yeah. I can't remember. I know the episode you're talking about, and I can't remember who the quote was, but it was something like, children come to us as exclamation points and question marks, and we hammer them into periods. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting to me because I think this comes for me, a few years ago, Carol Garbo Murray's book about illuminating care came out, and it validated so much of what I was thinking about those routine times, and like gave me a better way to articulate what my instinct was. And I think that what you're talking about takes it even to a more intense level, right? Something as simple as, is this child really tired? I know my schedule says nap time, but is this child really tired right now? To think about that as an opportunity to offer liberation, or to experience liberation. I don't want to say offer, because that's still pretty heavy-handed on the adult side of things, but I think that's
when we're
really
not giving them that option, we're oppressing them, right?
Yeah.
If you're saying you're tired because I said you're tired,
yeah,
then you're not even giving them the option to think like, am I tired? Because there's some things that we know. If a child is tired or over tired, we can see how they're going to behave. But if I'm just going to force you down and like put the cover off your head and go to sleep now and things like that, then I'm not really giving that child a choice and letting them settle their body naturally. I'm forcing them to do it.
And I think I'm going to let you talk in a minute, I promise, Krystina. But I think using words like liberation and like oppression, some people are going to have an automatic "how dare you" kind of reaction, right? But that's how intense it is. That's reality. I don't think you're being like exaggerating anything. That's what's happening. So many of our practices oppress the children that we say that we're here to help blossom, or all the little, fun cutesy metaphors things. We use.
Yeah. When I first started using the word oppression, my mom, who taught for almost 30 years, she said, don't use that word. You're going to activate a lot of people, but it's intentional, because that's how important it is to give you pause. I want you to feel something. I want you to think about, why did she use that word? Because it's true. That's why I'm using it. There's no other word that fits here.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how that kind of goes along with giving the children the opportunity to take up space in spaces.
Yes.
So whether it be at school or public spaces, and I think now that I'm a mom to a really tiny person that gets into everything, it really has made me think about like, okay, well, he has a right to be here. He has a right to this space. Just because it's making other people uncomfortable doesn't mean that he's being naughty or bad, or, he's exploring, and he has just as much of a right to be in those spaces as everybody else. And I think that so many people don't even take that into consideration, because he's a 15-month-old. And so he does have a right to be there. And I think that I catch myself apologizing for him. And then after I apologize, I'm like, why did I just apologize? No, he's a person that deserves to have all the feelings that he has, to have all the wonderings that he has, to all explore in the way that makes sense to him, as long as, of course, he's being safe and he's not hurting himself or other people and that kind of thing. But that really, what you're saying really resonates with me. And just how society views children in general, how, again, still like we want to move past like they can be seen, they should just be seen and not heard. But I feel like we're kind of doing that a little bit, like tiptoeing, like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, it's okay for them to talk a little bit, but as soon as they start doing
But
anything
not
that
too
makes someone
much.
uncomfortable, watch
Yeah,
out.
yeah. As long as it's cute and
Yeah.
not threatening to my authority.
That's right. So recently I've been getting into flying squads, and it's for that reason. I don't know if you all are familiar with
No, what's
flying
that?
squads. And in a nutshell, it's basically saying children have the right to exist just like every other human being does, and so they can occupy these spaces fully, and it's not like the playground, the park, the children's section only of the library. They have the right to be everywhere that human beings can be. And so to me, it's all political, right? That you have the right to exist. So me and my crew, we're getting up and we're hitting the streets and we're going everywhere. We're going to find some music, like, lunch places. We can go and get some live music. We're going to go to farmers markets. We're going to go to everywhere that you would expect to see children. You're going to see me and a bunch of kids because they have the right to be there.
Yeah.
I just think it's unfortunate the way that we want to see children but not hear them or interact with them at all. And so we have to change that. And the only way to do it is to make a lot of people uncomfortable. And I'm here to do that.
I know this is not necessarily childcare related, but I just had one of my son's best friends from, when they're in middle school just visited, and he has a 2.5-year-old now. So I had my fake grandson in the house for a couple days, but they were talking,
Yeah.
they're getting ready to fly back home. And I was just thinking about all the stress that was going to be on him and his wife, and just what an unpleasant experience it must be for a 2-year-old to be on a plane and go through all those things. And just, if we had a culture that tried to understand and include all humanity, including children who are humans,
Yes.
it would be so much less stressful to think about those
Stressful
situations
for everyone involved. And you think about it, we're all humans. We're all
Yeah.
adults. We've all had very human experiences. You've been somewhere and had an argument with someone. You've been somewhere and become dysregulated. You've been somewhere and cried. You've been somewhere and been extremely joyful and took up a lot of space and energy. And nobody was like, get them out of here. You were fine.
Yeah.
So, why do we do that with children?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think we always hold children to a higher standard than we're willing to hold ourselves to. We can make lots of justifications for our fluctuating skill levels, but we expect one very high intense skill level from children, and it's really unfair.
I've been here for like 7 seconds. Yeah. It's unfair.
Yeah. I was just
So Bell
pausing
Hooks
to
does
see if
all of
anyone
that.
was jumping in. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just want to, I've been following this Instagram account for a while. It's called Saved by the Bell Hooks. And it's essentially like screenshots or grabs from the Saved by the Bell show with like a Bell Hooks quote on it, whether it's related to this picture or not. So
Tiffany Pearsall told me about that.
Yeah.
About
So
that page.
there was one recently that was talking about anarchy, and I don't have it in front of me, but essentially she was saying that we need anarchy because things are unfair, but that's also really hopeful. Like that the anarchy work seems like it's frustrating and it can be really exhausting and it can be disheartening, but it's also really hopeful. Like we wouldn't keep doing it if we didn't have a hope that things could be a different way. And so that's been on my mind just because of all the conversations I'm in about how everything for children need to look like school, and oh, I can't do that in my program because the director won't let us, or whatever, all those things. And I think that's one of the books that I've read from Bell Hooks is that Teaching to Transgress. Like this should be our intention,
favorite.
Is to get people prepared to do things quote unquote the wrong way, to change oppressive systems, and to fight for the right of that oppressed person. In this case, sometimes we're talking about our oppressed people being babies and 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds,
4-year-olds and
4-year-olds.
5-year-olds.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's an important shift in language, I think, that we need to not be afraid to use.
And I think
And
it's
you
super
have to use
interesting.
it.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Krystina.
Oh,
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, I think it's also super interesting because those youngest kids are the ones that advocate and,
They're such
let
good
us know what they
advocates.
need, what they need, and like how
Mhm.
the world can be
Mhm.
more just, better than everyone. And then we beat it out of
Mhm.
them. We're like,
Yeah,
no, sorry, this
We
doesn't fit
do.
the mold. Like you can't think that, you can't be that way.
yeah.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought, but
Sorry.
amen. That's okay.
So you
It
said,
was going along the same line. Yeah.
yeah, you said when we were, getting ready to record that you wanted to start with bell hooks, but then go into talking about, was it a real person that also inspires you, or did you already?
Oh, it was Goldie
Yeah,
Muhammad.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
Goldie
So,
Muhammad that, because I had been writing before I started my page and became more vocal about the liberation of children and things like that. I was just writing it like I always do in my notes. And then I was talking to a parent. He was like, "Have you heard of Cultivating Joy?" And I'm like, "No." And he said, "Well, I want you to read this." And he brought it in. I picked it up, I read it, and I was just like, my mouth hit the floor, and then it just kept dropping because
mhm.
everything I was saying in my personal notes, he was saying, down to the phrases, everything. And I just could not believe someone like this existed. And they were in an academic level, in
Mhm.
academia, where I'm thinking, oh, I just do daycare,
Yeah.
And so that gave me the green light to say, no, you're on to something. You felt it intuitively and you need to run with it.
Yeah.
And so I just started saying it out loud. And then when I came across Bell Hooks, it was like, oh, Bell Hooks probably gave her the green light to
Uh-huh.
say the things that was intuitive to her. So,
Yeah.
and this is how it works. This is how it works with us.
Yeah.
We feel something. I feel like that's why the movement is getting so big, because there's so many people who intuitively feel the same thing. And it's just growing.
Yeah. So now you're given the green light, the people in your sphere and your
To
little
somebody, I hope.
ecosystem. Yeah.
Patching the torch
Yeah.
onto you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that idea of, reading something that resonates and that gives us the green light to do the thing we felt like was the right thing to do anyway. I feel like that's all the conversations we're
Mhm.
having in this series, that's really happening. It's like, it's
Yeah.
not just someone who I just really loved their book. It's this
Mhm.
really spurred me to some action and gave me permission to take action that I kind of wanted to take already.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
what's really, I've worked in settings where I didn't necessarily agree with everything that was going on, and
Yeah.
it gives you the momentum, or it gives you the like willpower to continue on because you're like, okay, I am not so far off. Like
Yeah.
maybe these
Mhm.
people aren't doing things the way I would, and I'm constantly hearing, no, 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 it has to be this way, it has to be this way. But then there's like one figure or those two figures that you read about, and their words really resonate. They really help you
Yeah.
keep going, and they really help push all of our wonderful work forward. Without
Yeah.
them, I don't
Yeah.
know if I would have survived. There's just at different parts of my career, there have been different people that have spoken so loudly to me that, yeah, I don't think I'd still be in education without them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to
That
think about the fact that maybe you're in the wrong room. For so long, I was
Yeah.
academic centered, and
A
I
hundred
felt
percent.
like it
Yeah.
was so wrong in my heart. I was like, this is wrong. I don't want to do this. I don't like this. And I never knew Lisa Murphy existed. And I told you that I used to say, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And who does it serve? That's what I
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
And so when I met Kristen, she was like, oh, like Lisa Murphy. And I was like, who? And
Yeah. We should say Kristen
Lisa
Peterson.
Murphy.
Yeah, is who you're talking
Kristen
about. Yeah.
Peterson. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes, yes, yes. And look at me. I got to a place where I'm just calling people by their first name. And so Kristen Peterson, yes. And so
Yeah.
when she
I
told
just
me
say
that and
that
I
because
looked her
otherwise I'm
up,
going to get comments that are like, Kisa,
yeah,
at minute 42, Kisa said
who
somebody's
was that?
name and I don't know who it was. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I looked into it and I just thought, the whole time you were just in the wrong room.
Mm,
You didn't know any of this existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I stepped out of that room and went into the right room.
Yeah.
Voila.
Love it.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But and to your point, Krystina, even now, you know, I'm 30 some years in, and I still have those moments where I'm like, wait, am I wrong? Am I the one who's wrong here?
Mhm.
100%.
Because the fight is so hard sometimes that I don't see the hope of the anarchy. I see the this conversation again, like
Mhm. Mhm.
or really this terrible practice is happening in so many places still. Maybe I am the one who needs to shift. And then, you know, these women that we're talking about in these episodes remind me, nope. Just
Yeah.
keep going. Like,
Mhm.
not that I'm never wrong, that's not what I'm saying, but you know, there are other people out there also fighting this fight, you know, looking for ways to serve children in non-oppressive practices, I guess, that liberated kind of way of
Mhm.
doing things. So
Yeah.
um what else, anything else about bell hooks, Kisa? Was there more you wanted to get into with that, with her?
So, kind of loosely, I just want to say something about the anarchy.
Yeah.
So, I feel like advocacy has been in my DNA. I've just been like this since I was little. And, you know, I raise my voice when I need to, and that's fine with me. But everybody doesn't fight the same way.
Right.
Some wars are exhausting. And when I think about anarchy, I think it might make people like repel a little bit because you think about how exhausting it is to do that. So you, like me, we use words with intention, right?
Uh-huh.
I like to use the word disrupt.
Oh
I'm going to
yeah.
come in and I'm going to politely disrupt what you're doing, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it might cause a war in your mind, but
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not the shake the table, flip things over type of person. I just
Sure.
want to disrupt your frame of thought.
Yeah.
And I think Bell Hooks does that.
Mm-hmm.
She's not like rah rah trying to tear everything down. She just wants you to rethink
Yeah.
why it is you're doing these things the way that they've been
Yeah.
done. And so, yeah.
Yeah, she's got the whole other book about critical thinking that has been really
Yeah.
meaningful for me too. And I think
Mhm.
I also love the word disrupt. I forget about it until someone brings it
Mhm.
back to me, but
Mhm.
also looking at children as disruptors. When we
Yes.
talked about them advocating and knowing their own needs, as you both have mentioned in different places in this
Mhm.
part of the conversation,
Yeah.
shifting from this is really inconvenient to me when the child does this to
Mhm.
what system is this child disrupting that I need to pay attention to here.
Yeah.
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 Cool. All
Yes.
right, Krystina, it's your turn.
Well, I definitely know I'm in the right room because I'm like, so many of the things that we talked about, I kind of wanted to get into with, you know,
I
who
love
I
it.
was going to talk about. But
Yeah.
there's so many things to talk about that, of course, we can go in
Yeah.
lots of different directions.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
wanted to start by talking about Emmi Pikler because I think she's incredible with all the work that she did in the Hungarian orphanages to elevate those children and make sure that they were thriving. I feel like she was one of the first people to really think about trauma-informed care and what it
Yeah.
meant for like infants.
Mhm.
And I don't think she gets enough credit for that. Like, I think that that's amazing. I think that the idea that really resonates with me with her is the idea of doing things with infants and toddlers instead of doing it to them.
Hmm.
Because again, like we were
Mhm.
talking about before, these are human beings. What if somebody was like helping you and they just like, you know, putting your shirt on, they just like roughly put it over your head and
Yeah.
just like, I don't know, it just wouldn't feel good. And so I've been thinking a lot about that because in my career, I really wanted to go back to working with infants and toddlers, but wasn't given the opportunity until I became a mom. And so now I have a toddler of my own to test out all these things with, and it's pretty
Mhm.
Now you're just
amazing.
like
And
Jean
he's,
Piaget testing it out on your own child.
I mean, it sounds really bad. I'm not testing it
No.
out, but it's just like, you know, experimenting with these ideas of treating them like a human, which is so
Yeah.
radical to some people that
Mhm.
anyway, I wanted to start with Emmi Pikler, but I really wanted to talk about my friend Courtney. She's Beach Street. She does Beach Street parenting, and so before I had my kid, me and my husband took her parenting class, and she talked about Emmi Pikler and Magda Gerber and treating children as human beings, like whole human beings, letting them show us the way, paying close attention so you can recognize their cues, so you know what they're talking about, you know what they need. It's not you constantly putting your ideas on these little humans, but really it's a partnership, and seeing how we can do this dance together, right? Like from diaper changes and normal caregiving routines to, giving them uninterrupted time to play. So many people think it's so weird that I had a blanket on the floor and my kid would just lay there, and he preferred to be on the ground than in anybody's arms. And that was just really weird to people, but he really liked that freedom of movement. And I just am so thankful to Courtney and to all the other just on the ground people that are spreading these messages to parents, to other educators, because in this fast-paced world, it's so easy just to do things to your kid, right? And not really think about how they're part of the process with you, and how they can be active participants in their life. And so I'm eternally grateful for all these fantastic women that came before us, and also the women that are currently doing the hard work of letting parents and educators know, like, there is a different way of doing this. We don't have to be, I mean, being with infants and toddlers can be really stressful. I'm not going to downplay that for lots of different reasons, but it can also be beautiful, and it can be slow, and it doesn't have to be this fast-paced thing that many of us are led to believe that it has to be. So
I always joke that Emmi Pikler can save new parents a lot of money, because every new mom is like, what do we need? What do I need to buy? And it's almost all like containment systems, various containment systems for the child. You don't need any of that. Put a blanket on the floor. Save yourself those hundreds of dollars. Get a good safe crib.
I have a question, because I didn't want to look up any of the people that were being named. If I didn't know them, I wanted to learn in real time.
That's excellent podcasting. Really?
So is Pikler where the Pikler comes from, or is that something different? Just saying.
The Pikler triangle. She was really into natural movement, and so she designed these like play things for the children to explore that would help with that. And she also she worked in the Hungarian orphanages, and so a lot of the practices of just being slow, she taught the caregivers there to do with the children in the space, and they've had amazing outcomes. And I actually have a friend that adopted from Hungary. She lived in Budapest, and she said that they still follow a lot of like her lead with regards to adoption and how children are treated in that process as well, which is super fascinating. And I want to do a deep dive with her about that at some point, because I think that we have so much to learn from them on how they do the adoption process too, which is a whole other conversation.
Right.
But
I have so many adoption advocates, like adult adopted children on TikTok that I follow, and I'm learning so much. But so Krystina, if for the people who aren't, like, what was happening in the orphanages? What did she have there before her to address that led to all this stuff we do now with
so help me if I'm wrong, but I think before it was just like, tons of children in these spaces. They would just be in their cribs. They would try to do the caregiving routines like basically as quickly as possible to get through them and to be able to get all the children's needs met. But what she realized was that a lot of, I think she actually was doing research before she came into the orphanages. So she had a background in some of this already. So she realized that if you actually spend time focusing on the relationship, that a lot of the trauma and separation that these children feel, not it can be gotten rid of, because I think that, that's a situation that they're going, that's really traumatic, and they have a lot, I'm sure, that they need to process, but it's a lot better for them than in other orphanages where that relationship piece didn't come first. And so they would really, instead of rushing through the routines, they would, take time to include the children and make them be a part of it, so that again, they were a part of the routine instead of having things done to them. And they were also given freedom of movement, which I think wasn't very common in other orphanages as well. I think that a lot of orphanages kept the children in their cribs, just contained,
and sometimes
because
swaddled,
it was easier.
even as toddlers, swaddled in that crib, and just unless they were eating or being changed, that's where they were.
And so for them, they would have freedom of movement. And so the caregiving routines would happen. These other children would be on the floor, playing, which is just a huge contrast to, I think, how things were done previously.
And I think on a different scale, of course, it's still really relatable to a lot of infant spaces I've been in. We've got,
oh yes,
walkers and swings and bucket
100%.
seats and boppy pillows and cribs and, things where they're, because we're focused on safety, I think, more than, in those orphanages, it was just overwhelming. They had so many and such big needs. But I that's why I say it's on a different scale, but I think it's still really, really relatable that
100%.
Emmi Pikler's idea that the relationship is key, and you don't have a relationship with someone you aren't trying to get to learn about. And that freedom of movement, they're safe, yeah, but at what cost in terms of their development?
Mm-hmm.
And her idea of primary care, even there was one adult who really was there to focus on knowing you. All of that stuff I think is so relevant and still will be so new to some people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that in our parenting class, or just when I talk to other parents, we didn't buy any of the containment devices because I'm
yeah,
first of all, waste of money. We actually got a
The car
giant
seat.
playpen. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean stroller, car seat,
Yeah.
that kind of. We got a giant playpen to turn into a yes space for him so that he could have that space. But when I told people that I put him on a blanket on the floor, they're like, "You can do that with infants?" I'm like, "Why wouldn't you be able to do that with an infant?"
Yeah.
They're like, "But
They've
don't they
been
need to be in
sold.
a DockATot or whatever?" I'm like, "No, they could just be on a blanket." But they're like, "But it's the floor." I'm like, "But there's a blanket. It's fine." I don't know. It's interesting that parents are just. I mean, some educators too have these ideas that they have to be in something to be safe, like you were saying, Heather.
Yeah.
It's an unwritten rule. And I know, as for me, I've been doing this for 15 years now, and it's revolutionary. The baby that just came, when I took her in at 10 months, I bought the play yard, and just something was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put this baby in there. And I was like, here's a novel approach. I'm just going to put the baby on the floor.
Yeah.
And that child, the going joke around here is that the baby doesn't realize she's a baby. She just does everything everyone else does.
Yeah.
She has full conversations. She can't talk. When it's time to sing songs, you say, "What song do you want to sing?" And she's like, blah, blah, blah. She just takes part.
Yeah. The beauty of that mixed age group. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I talk about Magda Gerber a lot, and what I am attributing to her actually might have been Emmi Pikler first. I mean, I know they work together. But I remember, again, this won't be anything new to anyone who's listened to me talk before, really. But I remember my first job in an early childhood, well, it was a child care center, and we had 24 2-year-olds and 4 adults. And I was so proud of how fast we had a mat on the floor for diapering. So proud of how fast I could get through that diapering. And somehow, this was before the internet. I don't know how I stumbled across any of this before the internet. But this idea of, wait, that's one-on-one time. We're also worried about children living in groups. Then why are we not carving out more ways to be one-on-one and to focus on this baby in front of me and this toddler in front of me for this bit of time we have, and letting them be an active participant and doing things like getting on their level and explaining what you're doing, and not just swooping in from behind, or the forehead grab nose wipe that we all do. Things as simple as that tie into these conversations we're having about respecting the child and oppressive practices. And so I've always, since I've learned that, I've been a proponent for doing things in an Emmi Pikler kind of way with toddlers. And then there's part of me that says, why do we stop when they're 3? If movement's important, if respect is important, is active involvement is important, attuned relationships, why would we stop when they're 3?
Just keep going. And then you won't have to spend as much money on therapy to fix what was done wrong when you were a child. Give them the liberation now so they don't have to scratch and claw for it once they get to be adults. There's
Mhm.
something that you said that was so profound, because I did not know this until you were just saying it. Many,
Can't
many
wait.
years ago, when I'm still working in daycare centers, there was a child who had, forgive me, I can't, I want to say it was cerebral palsy, but they didn't remember, they didn't know. Like, oh, his name was Kyrie, such a sweetheart.
Mhm.
And he just sat in, they put his car seat inside a playpen,
Oh
and they
boy.
just sat him there. So when I started working, I'm like, why is this baby always in there? And they're like, oh, well, he can't do anything. Now, I had no experience other than the few courses that I took in special education as a child. And I'm like, but again, something was like, he shouldn't be here.
Mhm.
So I would take him out and just started doing stuff with him, just got down on the floor with him. And he didn't have any teeth. He was a year old. He didn't have any teeth. And I'm like, well, do you all feed him? They're like, oh, he can't eat. He can't do anything.
Oh
So he was
man.
just like a shell of a person. So I started feeding him every day, like just like the little baby food, and playing with him on the floor. He started holding his head up. He started
Oh,
smiling. His teeth started to grow in.
oh.
All I did was interact with the baby. I knew nothing. I had no training. I'm just like, that's a whole human being.
Yeah. All
But
right.
you
That's
did it
You
the
all
take
are
the
second
training
giving
to
him
time
the
know
you
he
two
was a
have
care of
made
the
me
human.
cry.
world. Oh, sorry.
What'd you
But
say,
I always
Krystina?
think about that.
It's like, but he's a human. That's
Yeah.
all you needed to know, and
He's
you
a
can relate to
human.
any human, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, we can't leave him in the corner, because, and they're like, oh, he's in the foster program. We don't even know if he's going to stay here. And I'm like,
Even more
does he
reason to
stop
love him while
being
he's
human?
there. Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah.
Yes.
So now applying that to what you're saying about the orphanages and what they did and how it was just human interaction, the child, it wasn't that there was anything wrong with the child. It was failure to thrive. No one was giving him human warmth. No one was caring for this child. And so he was just kind of atrophying in the corner
Hmm.
Well, he'll
in
still
his car
step up to
seat.
the challenges that you give him, right? Like
Yeah.
he wasn't
Yeah.
giving any opportunities, so why would he do anything? Like
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
people that were there with him didn't believe in him, so why would he believe in himself at that
Hmm.
point?
Right. And he's probably a grown man now, but I just instantly thought about that because I thought hard. They were like, leave him there. And I'm like, I can't just leave this
Isn't that
child here.
interesting?
So,
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, so that's sort of a good transition into my piece here. But Krystina, was there more you wanted to say about Emmi Pikler, or that we didn't get into, or about Courtney?
I'm just so thankful that I found both of them
Yeah. Yeah.
when I did, because I think it definitely has changed who I am as a parent. And I'm definitely, I mean, and truthfully, when I go in the back classroom as an educator too, like I can't wait to apply some of these things
Yeah.
because children step up to whatever you challenge you give them. And so this
Yeah.
is something super silly, but I'll just share like from the time Ansel, he's my son, he was like a
Mhm.
couple months old, we would give him choices of what to wear in the morning, which it seems so silly, right?
It
And people are
doesn't
like,
though.
oh, they can't, how he can't choose, like what are you talking about? But he could. He would
Yeah.
stare at one choice. We give him two choices and hand him in, like put him in front of him, and he would stare at one longer, which was super interesting because then we realized that he had a preference for the color green. And so we're like,
Good
how many
man.
people know that their babies
Mhm.
know, like, love the color green, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
or he had these two really ridiculous prints of pajamas. One was like the Nightmare Before Christmas, and the other one, I don't even remember, but he 100% of the time chose the Nightmare Before Christmas. So whenever like he had a choice.
Mhm.
And so it's just, you're missing out on so many little details about these
Yeah.
humans when you
Let them
don't even
show
give them the
you.
chance.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's so
Mm.
funny. And that's a conversation, and I think this fits both things that you two have introduced here so far, that I have, like when I'm talking about respecting infants and letting them be part of the process as they're in, and talking to them about what you're going to do. I meet resistance sometimes. Well, they don't know, they don't understand, whatever, but it changes
Mhm.
me when
Yeah.
that's my practice, and I'm presuming competence in the child, and just presume, or just recognizing that they're a human being with rights. That changes everything I do, all the decisions I make, all the ways that I am with them. So whether they understand the words I'm using, which they probably do, um,
Mhm.
it's still changing the whole dynamic of the space we're in together. And that's important. That's worth it to me. Even if it
The
feels silly.
dynamics change.
Yeah.
And it no longer feels silly.
Mm-hmm.
This is just my thought, but I'm guessing you guys are going to agree. It feels like an honor. If I
Yes.
know how things change, if I did for 12,000 years, all my children just held their head up, wiped their face, I'm cleaning everything, and I'm not even thinking this is their existence.
Yeah.
I'm putting their head in the air. I'm doing these things. Once I realized that by incorporating their thoughts, their opinions, their wants, their likes, their dislikes in on that, I'm honoring them. So it no longer feels silly. It's just like, wow, I'm glad I got the privilege to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I talk about that all the time, the honor that we have and the opportunity and the responsibility because of that, because of all that, when I'm talking to my students, especially now. So, so the person I want to talk about is Lisa Murphy, and the quote I have here is going to segue from what you guys just were talking about. And we talked about this a bit off mic, that if I wondered if I should include Lisa, because she's a friend, she's been on the show, she's current, so it feels a little bit like, really, is this is this part of this conversation? But it's important. She's been important and influential to me, so I want to include her. But the quote I had chosen from her, Lisa Murphy on Playbook, for starting because I have to start with the quote. I can't. It's just but she writes in the very beginning, I am not going to stop being developmentally appropriate, nor will I second guess best practice because the person in front of me has never seen it.
See?
Yeah, and so I think that's in all these stories we're telling, is that there's been an element in so many of the people who aren't quite getting it, or the people, and I was one of those people early on. So that's why I want to acknowledge this. But I also have to, true confession, say that I was a Lisa Murphy poo-pooer before I knew her. So that's the other reason I wanted to bring it in, because I hadn't heard her speak, again, pre-internet days when I first started here, or at least more limited internet days when I first started to hear about her. I hadn't heard her speak. I hadn't read anything, but I had a teacher I knew who would say, and Lisa will talk about this kind of thing too. Oh yeah, I'm just like the ooey gooey lady. I'm just like Lisa. I just love everything she says, but everything I saw in her practice, I was like, ugh, well then I don't want that. But there is a disconnect, and she will tell stories about people who come up to her after shows or after gigs, after shows, because she's a theater kid too, and say, oh, I do all that stuff too, and then go into a story that they think connects to what Lisa was just saying about play, when it's clearly
like, that's not how any of this works. But
I think she's very entertaining, of course, if you've heard her speak. And I just saw her at a conference a couple of weeks ago. But I remember the first time I actually went to a conference where she was the keynote, and I was like, all right, I'm going to listen. And she said things like, am I doing everything within my power in this space for the children who are with me? And I was like, that's such a different perspective from, are the children doing what I need them to do? Am I in control of this group? Are we getting them ready for the next thing? The thought that I need to be thinking about, have I done everything in my power in this space for the children who are with me now? And so everything that she writes about play and her child-centered environment book just always comes back to that. But the other thing I am inspired about with Lisa is that she's reached a pinnacle. You know, almost everybody knows who she is. She's on the road all year long. Everybody wants to hear her, but she's so committed to still learning. Like she could very easily sit and do her very funny, very engaging, very emotionally moving "What if today was their only day" keynote and never change it. But she doesn't do that. She takes feedback from people. She reads a new thing. She listens to somebody else, and she's constantly trying to figure out, how does this fit with what I already thought and did, and what do I need to learn more about to get into this space?
So what I'm hearing you say is that she continues to play. She keeps learning, and she keeps changing, and it's iterative, everything that she does. So She's dope to me. She's probably one of the first disruptors that I ever came across, a current disruptor.
Yeah.
When I first heard her, I have a very low energy, like very reserved. So when I first heard her, I was like, I'm tired
She's a
to
lot. Yeah.
listening to her. She's a lot of energy.
Say it with
But
love. She's a
again,
lot. Yeah.
yes. But then I started listening to what
Mhm.
not I started listening. She captivated me.
Yeah.
So when I was like, she knows what she's talking
Yeah.
about. When I read her words, and I could just read it very slowly in my very reserved way, I was like, oh my God, like,
yeah,
she knows all of this, every single thing, and she knows how to serve the children. And so, yeah, I've always like, I
and
drank
that's the
that Kool-Aid.
focus. And she tells a story about her first day at Miss Mary's nursery school and all the things Miss Mary did, that I'm not going to try and do, any kind of justice to. But the fact that that has stuck with it, because one of the other things she says a lot is we don't remember being little. So it's hard for us to create that space for others to be little, or to support that space for them just to have a childhood. And so her retelling of her own personal story, I think, can be really, I was in this room a few weeks ago and there were hundreds and hundreds of people hearing her tell that story, some for the fourth time, some for the first time. But I know that took them all back to trying to remember a memory of themselves being little. And I think that's something we get away from too. We get so wrapped up in being teachers and being taken seriously and respected as a profession, which I want all those things. I'm not poo-pooing them globally, but when they get in the way of us seeing the humanity of the children who are in our spaces with us, and then seeing that they also have rights because of their humanity, we're going to be more open to things like play and relationships and moving away from this anti-child bias that we have so often.
Well, something
Hey,
that
how do we
just
all work? Oh,
go,
no,
Krystina.
go for it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just got too excited.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah.
How do we work with children? And it's so anti-child when you think about it. Like, everything we do, the practice of caring for children is kind of anti-child. It threw the baby out with the bathwater instead of embracing that we're supposed to be centering the child. So
yeah. And I don't think it's intentional. I don't think we wake up thinking, I can't wait to be dehumanizing today.
Right.
But if we don't stop and think about what's happening and notice and see the children as disruptors, then we'll keep doing it that way.
Yeah.
I think for me, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but like kind of what you guys were talking about is I've had a hard time seeing people that have that higher energy, so fun and like make light of things as being professional. And so that I've had to do some personal work on that, because just because you're lighthearted or have a good sense of humor doesn't mean that you're not professional too. And so that's something that I think she does bring to the table that I've had to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting because, I'm with kids, like they have fun and like, why shouldn't we be having fun? But like, I've had to do a lot of unpacking on my own to see like, where's that coming from for me? And so I'm also wondering like how many people just like immediately discredit her for that reason. Because I don't know. It's just something I'm just being very vulnerable and honest now.
Yeah.
Like it took me a while to like really be like, okay, like no, like look past like the energy. What is the message that she's sending?
Yeah.
So
no, I think
I'm
that's
glad
very
you
real.
mentioned that. Oh, sorry.
No.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is the reason why I stayed around, even though our energies are different, is because I usually reject any kind of white normative. This is the pinnacle. This is who you should follow, and listen to the people who are very down to earth and say the same impactful thing, but in a way that is accessible to everyone. And to me, Lisa Murphy does that. She is highly, highly intelligent, but she's not going to speak in a way that uses kind of exclusive terminology. And I love that about her. And that made me stick with her. But it's also why I don't know a lot of these theorists, because I reject it, because it doesn't speak for us. It doesn't tell our stories. And so you end up telling this story and I'm like, what? She did what?
But I think that's why it's so amazing,
I
right?
rejected it the whole time.
Yeah.
But that's also kind of cool too, because like so many that's why it's really important for lots of different people to send not similar messages, but messages that resonate with you, because like maybe one person doesn't resonate with you, but then somebody else that's saying the similar message does. And so then you follow that person, and then you hear about that other person that you initially rejected, and you're like, oh, okay, like now I can see where they're coming from now.
Yeah,
it got me all goosebumpy.
I just saw her a couple of weeks ago do this keynote, and it's been the first time I'd seen her do it in a lot of years because of COVID and whatever, but she does a bit where she tells a story about the child with the diaper who's, so into their play that they don't want to stop, and she does a walk where she's like imitating the child with the diaper that's down between their knees, and the whole room is roaring with yes, I've been there. It's that immediate. She's done the real work, I think, is part of it too. Like she's seen all the weird elements of working with children, and she uses it to help us see them more deeply. Even though it's a funny story, there's like always something rich that she gets to from that funny story. But but when you said, Kisa, that she's playing, that's what she's doing. And just like not all children, some children's play is more high energy than I am comfortable with, or lower energy than I'm comfortable with. And so it's just a good model for me of if we want to really support children's play fully, then we have to figure out our own playful instincts and ideas.
I'm onlooker play all
patterns.
day.
Yeah.
That's me in solitary play.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
my gosh. All right. So any last thoughts you guys wanted, something you hoped you'd be able to say that we haven't said or gotten to?
Is it Emmi or Amy? Is it
Emmi?
EMMI.
Okay.
Pikler.
Okay. I knew the Pikler because of the
frame.
Yeah.
I love these conversations. I'm having so much fun that I can't wait to have other people listening. So, but I expect that I'm going to get a lot of those. What did they say? Who were they talking about? Where can I find more information? So that's going to also be a fun journey, I think, as part of this process. But so thank you both for being on and sharing about the people who have impacted you and the ways that you're sort of carrying that on and pushing it forward. I love it. Here. The last thing I'll say, I'm really bad at winding up the podcast, if you've heard, but here's what I'll say. It's been so interesting. This is the third one. And I really just selected the scheduling by who was available at the same time, not necessarily who they wanted to talk about, but all 3 episodes have been like flow, like it just fits. And the people that we're talking about all fit. And it's really been wild.
I was just thinking that, Heather. I'm like, how did she?
I did it.
How did you know that this was going to flow this way?
No, the universe did that. So.
The universe did it. Yes.
So I'm really excited. All right. Thank you both again for being here.
Thanks
everybody for listening to another episode.
Bye, Krystina. See you. Bye-bye.